It's a pleasure to be here today talking about building an app with Nuxt. My name is Daniel Roe. I'm team lead of the Nuxt team. And if you're not familiar with Nuxt, Nuxt is a framework for building full stack applications using Vue and Nitro. And I'm going to show you how you might build an app with Nuxt. So we're going to build a recipe app today because I asked ChatGPT what we should do, and that's what it said. And I've gone ahead and created a bare minimum Nuxt project here. If you wanted to do that yourself, you could go to nuxt.com and click the Get Started button, and you'd see exactly how to do it. Just initialize the project and then open the project in your VS Code terminal. I'm also going to use something called Spoonacula as an API, because that's also what ChatGPT told me to do. I am very glad to welcome our new AI overlords. So we're going to create a recipe app and we're going to just display a recipe. To do that, we're going to need to hit this API. And this API is actually authenticated. So we can't just call this from the front end as you might do in a normal client-side app. And that's where we'll be very glad that Nuxt is a full stack application. And so we can create a server API. We'll call it recipes.get.ts, which tells Nuxt that it's just going to be a GET request that this responds to. And we're going to return some recipes. Let's fire up the dev server. When you fire up the Nuxt dev server, it's going to do all kinds of things, including create types. So for example, our editor knows the type of this define event handler function, and lots more. And that's all powered through this tsconfig.json, which is just extends one in this generated folder here, which contains lots of goodies from Nuxt that make your experience hopefully a lot better. So we're going to need to hit this endpoint, and we're going to use a fetch function to do that. So we'll say our recipes are going to, we're going to use this $fetch function. So $fetch does a number of things for us. So it will, for example, pass a response if it's JSON. And that's what we want to do. We don't need then r.json. We can actually just await this $fetch itself. It also does a few other things for us. So we want to pass some parameters. They're query parameters. So we can just specify them here. So we want to limit a license. Yes, so we only want ones that can be publicly displayed. And we want more than one. We'll go for 100, just because I want to maximize the use of my free API token. Okay, so we're going to get these recipes, and we also need to authenticate ourselves. So they have a, let's see, where is it? They have an API key that we can pass. And so we also need to be able to pass this API key. Now, I've already created in this project a .env file. And in Nuxt, we can specify that a certain environment variable is going to be overridable at runtime, which is what we want. So we could, for example, set this in our deployment environment rather than needing to hardcode it in the project. So we can say something like Spoonacula API key, and I'm just going to pass a default empty string as a value. And actually, when I then need to use it here, I can directly use it like this. I get TypeScript for it, and I can just pass that API key through to this fetch query. But how do you set it at runtime? Well, if you hover over that token, you can see that Nuxt has given us the environment variable name. And so you would just set that. Now, I already have set that in the .env file, but you could do the same. And I'll create a .env example just so we are clear if you are looking at this later on. This needs to be set in order for this to run locally. Okay, so we should now get our recipes. It's giving me a red underline because it's unknown. This is, by the way, good practice because we don't actually know. I happen to know that recipes is an array of recipes according to the API documentation here, but actually we don't know any more than that. And so let's just hit this endpoint that we've created. So we're going to hit our API recipes endpoint, Just make sure it's coming back with a response. Yep, those are our recipes. I'm just going to copy them now to the clipboard. If you're using a Mac OS, PB copy is your friend. You can very easily do something, copy it to the clipboard, and then paste it in VS Code or somewhere else where you can do some more search and replace or other editing on it. In this case, what I'm really interested in doing is just grabbing a copy of one of these recipes so I can create some types for it. So I can actually handle this in my app. Because I want type safety. I don't want to return an unknown thing. I want something that is actually typed. So I'd say sample data is going to be this. That's a recipe for us. And we're going to use something called Valibot. Valibot is a library that lets us perform validation on data like this, and will actually give us back typed information. So it gives you safety. So for example, you will be trying to access a property that doesn't exist on a recipe. So in this case, Valibot has a very similar API to Z. So I'm actually just going to import it as Z from Valibot in order that Copilot will help me a little bit, because when I see something like this, I want to type it. I don't typically want to do that piece by piece. I want to be able to do something like this. Recipe schema is Z object, and hopefully Copilot is going to come to my aid here and give me a number of other suggestions for what this should be. Now, do we have a URL? Yeah, we do. So instead of string.url, which is a odd one, we'll just do z.url. Z.object. Let's just say that's a string. We don't really need it anymore than that. Okay. And that is that right? Is that really everything there? Feels like there might be some more properties. Yeah, extended ingredients. It's definitely there. Are there any more? Diets, dish types, cuisines, instructions. Really, what you want to do at this point is only include the things that you really care about at the other end. But this should do for now to start with. And what we're going to do is validate this response. So rather than keeping on refetching, I'm actually just going to validate our sample schema and do this. So I'm going to return z.parse recipe schema sample data. And I fully expect this is going to throw us an error. Probably the schema that Copilot has created. It seems to be coming through okay. Great, that seems good. It might be the case if we get a larger body of recipes that there's an issue here. So we can try that instead. We can do z-parse, z-array, recipe schema, recipes. Let's try that. There's probably going to be a recipe in there that doesn't match the schema. And yes, that is the case. So in this case, you would add a try catch and basically handle that. Now, and we'll return an empty array. So if this happens, we're going to see that we have got an array of issues. And so we could actually navigate over them. So we could do something like e.issues map I, and you're probably going to want I path. And that is going to give a more helpful error message. Let's try it one more time. See if we can come up with some things we can quickly fix. Yeah, this is achievable. Okay, so we have this name clean. It's coming as null. So we can actually say that name clean is possibly going to be null. So that's just a Z nullable. There might be some others like that. Let's see. We also have here this image, which is undefined. So we can actually specify that we might have some images that are undefined. And that image happens to be at the top level. So it'll be this one. Okay, nullable, I guess. Optional, yeah. We have here image type, and that is also optional. And finally, we've done name clean, and that, and image type, and name clean. So I think we should be good to go. Let's try it one more time. Beautiful. Okay, so we're passing our validation, and what's better, we now actually will get type safety when we get this data. So I think at this point I can drop out our sample data from here, and we'll just use our schema. Now, in development, we would be hitting this endpoint over and over again, and basically gradually hitting the API limit. So if we have a very quick look at my console, we see that I'm moving up to my daily quota. I'm probably fine, but in heavy development, I wouldn't want to risk it. So I'm going to do something that you might find helpful, and that is I'm going to create a cache, and I'm going to cache this function to the file system. So I'm going to simply make this a cached event handler. By default, that would be cached in memory, and I can pass some cache options. So in this case, I'm going to say the base is going to be recipes. That means it will be stored in the Nitro cache layer with this recipes : prefix. And I can now specify the kind of storage that I want in development. So there's $ development and $production prefixes in the Nuxt config mean configuration that only applies in development and production. So I'm going to say that I'm going to configure a Nitro storage layer called recipes, and it's going to be a file system driver, and it's going to have, I think just base is going to be recipes like that. Now, if I hit this endpoint again, what I am expecting, very much hoping, if I've remembered my syntax, so there's this new folder created called recipes, and in there is actually the full response of that API input with a little hash. And now every time I hit it, I'm going to directly be serving that from the cache, from the file system there. And I can specify a few more details in our cached event handler. So I could do something like, for example, I always want the key to be recipes. I don't need to hash it. I never want to bypass the cache. I always want to go through it. And I might also do something like max age is going to be, say, 1 day. And that is going to be, is that a day? I guess so. And I could do the same with stale max age. There we go. So that would be a sort of a cache configuration. If I hit it again, we should now see another file created, this one just named recipes.json. And we could even at this point say log console log making fresh recipes request. And if we have a look and hit that endpoint, it's doing it because we changed it, and now it's not making any more requests. So that should be a pretty safe way. And if I were to restart the server, try that again, we're now just serving this cached data. So that will save my API token, and it's quite a handy little thing to be able to do. Cool. So now I don't need to worry for the moment about the API endpoint. Now I can focus on the front end. So I want to do something with this recipe. Now in your Nuxt project, you'll have the server folder, which is where all of your backend stuff lives. But you also have this app.vue, which is where your front end lives. And I could type something there, and that's going to appear on the front end of my app. In this case, I want to do a fetch of that recipe data. So I can use this $fetch again to grab it. I could do something like this. And we'll actually have type support for that API endpoint. And I could display it on the screen. Now that, unfortunately, because of how Vue works, this will run once on the server to render the HTML, and it will run another time on the client to hydrate it, which means you fetch it twice. We don't want that, so we can run a built-in function Nuxt provides called useFetch, which will actually handle making sure that this only runs once on the server, and that we reuse the data on the client side. So if we quickly checked the network requests and we had a look at just the fetch requests, you'll see that there's nothing coming through. Dev.json is something else that Nuxt provides, a manifest of what's happening here. So great, we've got our recipes, and we could even say recipes. We'll even name it a recipe, and we'll actually create one. We'll say we'll just say the first recipe is the one we're interested in, and we're actually going to do something with that in the screen. Recipe, cool. So here's our recipe. If you like pretty printing it, you can wrap it in pre, and that's often very helpful when you're analyzing something and you want to figure out how to handle the data. Now in our Nuxt app, I thought it might be useful to, rather than reinvent UI, to use a UI library. So we're going to use Nuxt UI. Now, in order to install that, we're going to use the DevTools, although there are lots of other ways of doing it than just the DevTools. So we'll click Get Started, and I'm going to use the command palette and just type Command K, and I can then type modules. I'm going to install the new module, and I want to install the UI module. Now this is a little bit non-responsive, I guess, because I have my DevTools open, but I'd like to install that. Now, to prevent someone else with access to your internal network from being able to do bad stuff to your computer, you have to manually authenticate with a token the first time you use the DevTools. And now that we've done that, we should be able to go through and add the UI module. And it's going to tell us what it's going to do. It's going to install it, and then it's going to add it to my Nuxt config, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. Great. So you can see, actually there's now 4 modules because the UI brings with it Tailwind, the icon module, color mode module, and Tailwind CSS itself. So that's all good. I'm going to hide DevTools for the moment. The appearance has changed a little bit, which is fine. Let's start using some of Nuxt UI's components. I'm going to open the documentation, and let's get started. So this has already happened for us. There's some information about how to configure the theme. I'm really just looking for some usage information. I want to see where we can use some elements. Okay, so initially I think we probably want to have, what do we want? What's most important? Well, I guess we can do it as we go. What I'll do is just, it's very interesting. I feel like that table of contents should somehow be visible all the time, not just when I have a wider screen. But oh well, we can zoom out, I guess, to get it for the moment. Okay, so what we want to do probably is have, say, a header with a recipe title. We maybe want an image. I think there seems to be an image here. We want some ingredients in a table, and we want some instructions, and we want a link out to the original source. Okay, so to start with, Nuxt UI provides a container, which is probably what we're going to want to do to handle the sort of overall picture of the page. So where is that container? So this is what we want. We're going to grab this uContainer and wrap everything in that. And then we probably just want to fall back on our normal header to give the recipe title. This is where that parsing and validating the data is so helpful, because we do get everything typed for us here, and we know it's genuinely the case because this is happening on our own server that we're in control of. So we have server. Let's see. Great. We probably want to style it a little bit, so let's make it a little bit bigger. Say some margin at the top. We want it to be bold, maybe large, and we'll give it some padding also, if that's not silly to do both at the same time. We probably now want to have some information. So we have got some more interesting stuff from this API. So we have, for example, there's some dish types, so what it might be used for, and we can actually do something there. So we'll create a U badge, and we can have, I think we can pass it a label. So we can do something like label. We'll probably want to iterate over the dish types. So label in recipe dish types, and then we can pass this label like that. And that should give us some nice dish types. Can I just pass no slot? There we go. And I'll wrap that in a div so we can get some nice gaps between them. Cool. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, what else do we want? We want a little section with some with a summary information and the image. So we can create that here. We'll pop in the text, which seems to be annoyingly, and I would actually try and fix this in a bigger project, but it seems to be HTML, and it's also not coming from our own API. So this is definitely something to look at. You want to validate this. You want to make sure that there's nothing bad coming in. And we can give that some styling, make it a bit bigger. We can also give it a max width. This is an important thing, I think, for readability, is make sure you have a max width matching characters. We also want to drop our image in there, so we can do we can use Nuxt image. Nuxt image is a built-in component with Nuxt. It's not installed by default though, and so we just actually need to press enter, and Nuxt will install it for us. That means that it's going to be separately listed in your Nuxt config. So if the Nuxt image is updates differently, then you can, it has its own versioning basically, which you can manage. So we now have an image, and we can actually do something like use object fit cover to mean that we've got a little bit better picture there. And we might also make this a flex layout too, because I love flex layouts. So give it a bit of space above it. And then we can basically reverse the order in larger screens. So it goes on the right, but on the top on a mobile layout. So we get something like that. It's already looking nice, I think. Or anyway, as nice as I'm aiming for today. Okay, what's next? We want to give some ingredients for our recipe. So we have another section, and this one's going to have it's going to have a title. So we're going to say this is going to be our ingredients section, and it's going to need to have a list of ingredients. So we can maybe use a table, which is provided by Nuxt UI as well. Nuxt UI allows us just to bind some data to it. So in this case, we can say our rows are going to be the recipe's extended ingredients. And I need to close the tag, I guess. I'll just close it like this. So that's going to automatically generate a table with all the data for these extended ingredients. But I think we can clean it up here. But first of all, what do we have? We've got names, some original name, I guess, from the original recipe, and amounts, so some past data, so we could do some interesting stuff with it. And what we also have is an image. Where is the image? Definitely have an image. Maybe I didn't pass it in my recipes, but I'm pretty sure we've got an image here. Yeah, we do. We should have an image, okay, for each of the ingredients. Interesting. So hopefully, if I hit that recipes endpoint again, it will. I might have to delete the cache and rerun it. Let's hit it once more. Oops. We have to validate it maybe. Let's try that. Oops, I shouldn't have restarted, but hopefully that will address the issue. No, there's another problem. What's the issue? Title. Oh, that's because that's a side effect. Basically, we seem to have another problem with validation. Let's try this once more. Hit the recipe endpoint. It's coming through. We do have the image, recipe image. Do we have an image for the ingredients? Yes. Okay, we're back and running. So basically, we have this image, which should now be coming through there, and we want to. I would like, I think, to display the image and maybe some metadata for the each of the ingredients in this little table here. So in order to customize the display of the table, we can do a couple of things. We can actually say what columns we want to display, which we can go ahead and do down here. So our columns are going to be, now it basically needs to be an array of objects with key and label. The Nuxt UI, that's how the Nuxt UI works. But I want to do that in a sort of type-safe way. So I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm going to import the Nitro types for our own internal API like this. And then I can actually specify that the columns that I want to show have to match. So it's going to be an array of the of some field that exists on the response of the internal API from API recipes, and that's typed by method. And then because it's an array, I want the type of just one of them. And then I'm only interested in the extended ingredients. And again, because it's an array, I want the type of just one of them. So this columns now should be an array of strings of just like the column names here. So in this case, I probably am actually only going to want name, but this is good practice to do because it means that if your API changes something like this, your columns, it's actually going to throw you a type error and fix it for you. So I'm just going to map them like this, call, and I'm going to return an object with a key, which is the call, and also a label, which is also the same column. And we can pass that into our table like this. I think we should be able to do like that. There we go. So now we just have the name coming in. Okay, next, I said I wanted to customize the data that the table was showing. And this is actually surprisingly straightforward. So I can create a template and say that I want to handle the name data, not the header, but the data of the table. And I could type anything at this point. I could make them all Bob. And so in this case, I'm definitely going to want to access the name, which is what we already have. But I also want to add an image, and I want to add some measurements here. So that's, I think, pretty straightforward. So I should just be able to do row measures. Now, at this point, measures, it's not typed, but the measures here is an object. It has US and metric values, which is great because we can localize. So let's do that in our app as well. We're going to say const metric maybe is ref true. Let's default to that. And then we want to say const unit is going to be computed metric value metric or US, I guess, is the other alternative. And we can have a toggle for that in a moment. But for the moment, we can actually just say we now have unit like that. And that's just going to give us a specific amount and unit information. So we're going to say we want the amount and we want the unit long, I guess. And then we're going to, some of them don't exist. So the apples, they're just 6 apples. So we're going to filter them, and then we're going to join them with a space. So we basically have something that is like 1 teaspoon or 6 apples or 2 persimmons or whatever. Great, so we have an amount, and now we want an image. Now, the thing about the image, if you have a look at the data here, is it's actually just a string, and this needs to come from somewhere. There has to be a URL for it. So if we fire up the Spoonacular API again, we want some information about the images, and we want to know how we can show them. So there's this special format. So we have got this this prefix, and then based on those images for cooking equipment and recipes and ingredients. And actually, I only really have time today to do ingredients, but you see it has a format for different sizes. And so this means it would actually be quite useful at this point to create a custom provider for this with Nuxt Image. Now, Nuxt Image ships with support for lots and lots of providers. So if you have a look at the Nuxt Image docs, you can see that we have providers for loads and loads of different options, but we don't have a Spoonacular provider. And the good news is, with most things that we create, it's possible to create your own custom providers. So this is an example of a custom provider. So we're going to create one here. We're going to call it providers Spoonacular. And this provider is going to have this. It's basically going to be export a function called getImage. And this getImage is going to be a way of coming up with an image string from some other information, specifically a height and width, and maybe some source value. And what we want to do first is we have to tell Nuxt that exists. So we do that in our image configuration. We can provide a providers key, and we're going to have well, this is great. That's pretty much exactly what we would have to do. So we're going to do exactly that. We're going to create a provider, and we're going to give it a source path there. And Spoonacular is going to be the provider name by default, and we don't really need any more options. Hopefully, this is going to work for us. So then in our app, we would be able to use Nuxt Image like this. Nuxt Image provider is Spoonacular. And then we want to do source is going to be our row image. And then we would have some other things. We want a height and width, and we probably want alt text as well. Something like image of row dot name. And we probably also want a height and width, maybe something like width 20, something like that. And I guess they're probably numbers, so we want to pass them as numbers. Great, so we have an image. That's almost certainly not going to do anything at the moment. We need to know that because we have to write the provider. So our valid, I'm just going to hard code this for ingredients, but you could also write some logic to switch between ingredients and cooking equipment. So our possible sizes are 100, 250, and 500. And and this is the kind of URL. So we want, therefore, this is going to be our base URL. So we can just put that up there. And then we want to be able to return the ingredients and a size. So we're going to say, okay. So we're going to say it's going to be something like, we don't even need this. This should be quite straightforward. So what we want is, and then a slash, and then the source at the end. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Const sizes, it's going to be that. We're going to want to have a prefix, and it's going to be something like that. And so we're going to join the prefix, and then the source comes at the end. So whatever our apple.jpg or whatever we pass, that's going to be the last bit. But what we do need to know is how to put the right size here. So we're going to basically, I think, go for the next biggest size up of the one coming in. So if we have a width or height, we'll use that as our size. I don't think we support anything but square images here. And we're going to just find the next biggest size. So it's going to be basically sizes. Yeah, that's a pretty good choice. And so then our prefix is going to be size times size. There we go. That should give us a value. And now I'm very much hoping if we switch back to our app, we should have, well, we have images, but they're not quite right. Why isn't that? It's not, what does it look like? 20 by 20. Oh, we want, sorry, next biggest there. Let's try that. Is that working? No? Oh, it is. Okay, great. So we've written a custom Nuxt image provider, and we have these nice little responsive images coming in. If you have a look at what they actually provide, so there's a lot going on here. It provides a source set with a number of different choices. And in this case, actually, it doesn't, because I've said it's so small that it's just giving me the option of the next biggest size. But it would give me some different sizes for responsive sizing if, say, this image were a little bit bigger. Okay, that is quite a nice thing to be able to build. Let's see, do we need any more? I would really like them to be sort of in a row. So let's actually just wrap them like this in a span. And we'll give it a little bit of styling. Cool. I hate the way, okay. That all is looking very much what I want. Maybe give a little bit of height at the top of the table. And I guess ingredients probably needs to be styled also, so we make that larger. Okay. Okay, we also need one more thing, which is why I'm creating a row here to do it. Right, so we also want to have the recipe instructions. And at this point, I'm just going to drop the sort of visualized version of the recipe down here. I want it basically to one side of the list of ingredients. And so basically, I want another section, I guess. And this one isn't going to be a table. It's just going to be another like column alongside it. And it's going to have some steps. So it should look like, I guess we're still in mobile layout. Or maybe I haven't properly coded this yet. Okay. So we want to have another heading. I'm going to call this steps. Also should be large. And we should have some steps. And because they're important that they be in order, we're going to use an ordered list. And then each of those is going to be an item in recipe analyzed instructions. So we do something like in recipe analyzed instructions. And actually each of those steps has name and then its own steps. I actually think this should probably be like this. And then each of those has a number and a step. So I think I'll pull that out as just number and step like this. And so we can then print the number and we can print the step like that. Beautiful. But we can apply some nice additional styling, I think, for the number, something like this. We probably want the list item here to be a flex. We'll make it items baseline because they'll probably wrap, and we'll put a little gap between the two of them. We want this probably to be, I'm making it inline flex just because it seems to be easier to center things that way. We'll make it fully rounded, and we'll give it like a primary color background, something like that. Okay, So hopefully, I probably also need to give it a height and width, I think, because it's... right. What do we want? I actually want it probably to have a... I basically want it to look... Okay, I'll go to ring. I think that's actually safe. Make it little folds, and there we go. Okay, that looks nice, right? What else do we need to do? I think that's probably good for the ingredients. We probably need to add that link out though. So we want something like, we have a button, which is equivalent of a Nuxt link. It sort of wraps it. And so we can do something like this: Vue original recipe on source. Oh, there is something called source name, I'm pretty sure, on this recipe, but I don't think I passed it in my... Let's try this. Cool. Let's try that. It probably won't work because this probably doesn't... It wasn't in the original thing, but it's an external link. And it's going to recipe source URL. And I'll just give it a little bit of height. Okay, what else do we want to do? I think at the top we have this U badge. I think we can actually use some of its features to give it a bit of a nicer style. So we have this variant, and I like the subtle variant. So which is also what I've styled these steps to look like. So we can do that subtle variant. And it looks to me like I've not really properly styled the two sections here, steps and ingredients, because I really want those to be side by side. So I wonder what I've done wrong. Oh, I bet I need to cover them in a div and maybe make that flex. Let's pop that up there and make that a flex call on mobile. Flex row, give them a gap. There we go. Okay, so, and the ingredients I think needs a bit of height too. What's going there? I think maybe if I give this section some height. Yeah, okay, there we go. So that's pretty much there, I think. If I were to refresh that, I am expecting... Oh, at the moment I'm just getting the first recipe, but actually we probably want a random one. So let's do that. Let's put a transform in here and say we're going to get a random recipe. So math random. Wait. Yeah. Okay, that should work. And now this is just going to be a single recipe. And if I refresh, beautiful. So I'm getting different recipes. It looks like I might have some styling issues down there. Steps. And we might want to, there we go. No, it shouldn't shrink. So there we go. That looks a little bit better. And now we are getting a random recipe every time we refresh. Have I given it bad end tag? I'll just do this. Right. Cool. I think that's pretty much it. So there's some other things that we could do here. I think that might be some nice improvements. So for example, we could use unstorage to ensure that this cache that we've implemented locally also works in production. I'm not going to implement that now because I'm aware we're out of time. But you can have a look at some of the built-in drivers that are supported. So there's Vercel, there's Netlify, there's lots of others, Redis and PlanetScale and so on. And basically you would just do exactly what we've done here to create a storage driver, but apply it in production instead. I think the only thing really left to finish is, say, initial commit. And to deploy it. So let's push it up to a GitHub repo. that again, publish. We're going to publish to a public repository, Daniel Roe spoon. And I am just going to open Vercel, and we will create a new project from spoon. We'll need to give it an environment variable, and I'm just going to do it like this. Deploy. Let's see. Fingers crossed, right? Building. Okay, we're in invalid int. Oh, for goodness sake, have I genuinely... Ugh. What is that? How did that even happen? Okay. Try it one more time. And I'm pretty sure that it was warning me at some point about that as well. Okay, if we go back, we should be able to see that app here. A new deployment is probably already being created because I pushed it. If you want to test these sorts of things locally, you can certainly do that. Maybe that would have been a good thing to do. You can just run pnpm build and pnpm preview, and a Nuxt server will be started that lets you check what this is going to look like in production. But I just want to see in a second, is this going to work on Vercel? I would probably also, for what it's worth, on Vercel, create some root rules to cache the response. So I would do something like, I'm going to cache every root. I'm going to use SSR. I'm going to use SWR to cache that. And in fact, I probably want to do it for 1 day. So that's going to be, again, 60 times 24. And I think that would be good enough to make that work. I think I could also do ISR. So feat cache on Vercel. But let's first check to see that everything is working, and it looks like it is. If I visit that page, everything is coming through. It's in dark mode, it seems, so maybe our images don't look great, but that's probably something we could fix. And I think my responsive styling on those steps isn't great, but that's something for another day. I hope you liked this deep dive into building a Nuxt app from scratch. And I hope you have some ideas to improve it. But even more, I hope you build an app of your own that is pretty cool. I'd love to see it if you want to show it. And that's all from me. I hope you have a great rest of your conference, and look forward to seeing what you come up with.